So welcome everybody to Talking Yoga. We're here with Rodney Yee, who is one of my main teachers, so I'm extremely excited to welcome Rodney to our conversation today.
That's quite an honor to say that I'm one of your main teachers. Likewise.
You've reached a lot of people with your teaching, so we have questions from all over the country.
Oh, wow.
Let's start with where we are right now today. Why do you practice yoga?
Why do I practice yoga? I don't practice anymore.
You're perfect.
I feel like at this point I'm doing yoga constantly. It's been so long, it's part of my everyday DNA. So it's a way of constantly observing, a way of questioning, a way of listening to the body, a way of listening to the breath, a way of listening. And I feel like the tools that have brought me to this place in my evolution of yoga are just a part of my moment-to-moment life at this point. Though I still do have a formal asana practice and pranayama practice, and more a moment-by-moment meditation practice.
And why do you do this? What does it do for you?
I really believe that it gives me the gift of life. I feel like in a lot of ways I wouldn't have this gift that I'm born into anywhere near as available to me without these practices. I feel like I can smell, I can taste, I can hear, I can directly touch life as it is and as it's arising, to feel what my feet are feeling right now, to feel the geometry of my body, to get in touch with the other forms that are arising, the people that come into my life and out of my life. So it really gives me direct contact. I like to think of Krishnamurti when he says, the first time a little kid touches a tree may be the last time they actually touch a tree. And that's really sad to me, thinking that through the concept of a tree, they lose actually the tree itself. And I found, I think early on, I found that I was losing my life. Through my studies in college and high school, I felt like something was actually being pulled away from me, something of great value. And I feel like the yoga practice at that time was a huge revelation. It was like, no, wait. The very gift that I was given by being born doesn't need to actually leave.
So what brought you to yoga in the first place?
I was curious about my body from early on. When I was 4 years old, I couldn't sit cross-legged, Then I got into gymnastics, then I got into philosophy. I was a physical therapy and philosophy major at University of California, Davis and Berkeley. And then I got into ballet, and I had a very tight body. So there was a yoga studio upstairs. And a friend of mine and myself went upstairs so that we could become more flexible, And that's how it started. Really, that afternoon coming out of class, it was like, wow, I actually get to feel this way. And I still feel the same about the practice 33 years later.
So what are you working on in your practice right now?
I'm looking at some things that I've heard about for many, many years, like this thing about some central channel in the body. I'm working on how to use the torso as a laboratory for an experiment. I'm using the body as a way to be attentive and to notice how my mind wants to sort of fly around like a kite without a tail. So I'm sort of using my body as the tail of the kite, if you will, and my mind as the flying of the kite. So I just feel like at this point things just get more subtle. It's you're not looking at big things. You're looking at small, minute moments of being present or not being present.
Who have been your teachers, that have most influenced you?
Started with Merlinda Purley, an Iyengar teacher in Berkeley, California, and then Donald Moyer at the Yoga Room. After that, Manusa Manos from the Iyengar Institute in San Francisco, and then Ramanand Patel. Those are my most obvious teachers, are the ones I sat in a classroom with and tried to learn what they were dishing out. Then there were the people that I feel like I actually learned the most from, my peers. You know, there's Richard Rosen, who we grew up in the yoga world together. There's, Ian Swensen, who woke up with me at 5:30 every morning, and we tried to figure out some of the things that we were being taught. And then most recently, Colleen Saidman, my wife and partner and fellow teacher and co-teacher and co-director. The relationship itself is probably one of our greatest yoga practices. Really trying to listen.
Are there any texts right now that are particularly inspiring to you?
Richard Rosen has been a huge source of thought for me because he's done so much research. And so when I go back to Oakland, I feel like I get together with him and you, and I feel like I sit down and have lunch and ask him the couple of questions that I feel like are rising for me. And usually he has some more sort of traditional text that has a reflection on what I'm asking. And so that's been a great source for me. Both Colleen and I, as she's writing her book, she's looking again at Georg Furstein and some of the writings he is talking about. There's a lot of books on my shelf that I'm sort of pulling out and reading a chapter here and there from. Mark Singleton, The Yoga Body. I'm trying to find out really what is the more true history of this art form and how did it really evolve and what has just been passed down as a myth, a false myth actually.
Tell me about your students. What do you learn from your students?
For the most part, I teach mixed level classes. I find that unfortunate in the structure of yoga, actually, in the structure of how it's taught. I feel that it could be much better for the students and myself if it was structured differently. But for the most part, I'm caught in teaching mixed level classes to the general public. And because of that, I find the basic questions that come up are not necessarily mundane. They're just questions that I've thought on for a long time and don't need to discard, but in some ways they've already been answered. And so my students at this point are revealing just more about human nature, like what do they want? What are they interested in? Why are they interested in that? Is it just some big, much bigger movement that are sort of popping up questions? Are they really incredible individual inquiry that's going on? Very rarely, I'm sorry to say, do you find someone who's really making an earnest inquiry. I hate to say that, but it feels to be true.
How about in teacher training? Do you find there's a greater level of inquiry there?
Not necessarily. The public class, you never know what people are coming for and what they're leaving with. You really don't, because you're not taking a survey and you're sort of, I tend to pontificate a little bit in class, and people sometimes say, that really helped me, or, that's a really great way of looking at things. I'm going to take that home and think about it. It's not really because someone's coming to a more advanced class, or someone's coming to a teacher training, or someone's coming to a beginner's club class that makes them naturally more as if their inquiry were deeper. It's just not true. And that's what's funny, even from someone's application to one of these programs. You can't really tell which one of them are actually going to be naturally curious and have that still the flame of innocence and the flame of curiosity. And you try to show them that, really. You try to show them, are you really interested in this? I mean, I have to say, as we're starting more studios around the country, one thing that comes up in discussion all the time is like, who do you think, out of all these people that are wanting to be teachers or wanting to be involved, or students are calling and I'll be in bed at nighttime and we'll say, which one of these people do you think are really interested in the subject? Are they doing it for some strange reason? And a lot of times the reasons are really strange, but how many of them are genuinely interested in the subject? And if they are, the doors are all open right now.
So with that in mind, what advice would you give people who are starting the practice of yoga?
I hope that through the tool of yoga, they start finding out what they're really passionate about, what they're really interested about. And if I can help them at all, have a tool or introduce them to a tool that helps support that inquisitiveness about a certain subject, my job's done.
We like to look at yoga as a tool for self-examination.
I immediately think about Richard Rosen because sometimes he says the basic question of who are you, right? And it comes up in yoga class because you might say, oh, pull your foot closer to yourself. And it's like, oh, is the foot not a part of myself? And so you come to basic questions like, well, who am I? And the great thing is some of the answers might be actually in the body itself. The answers might be in the way you breathe. The answers might be in the way you think. So how are you going to examine that, right? And so as a teacher, I'm going to try to show you the tools, but then I'm going to show you what the tools are good for. In other words, I might show you a hammer, but if I don't show you, oh, this tool is about hitting something, then you might spend a little bit of time looking at that hammer if you've never seen a hammer before thinking, I wonder what this is for. And you might try using it for walking on or something. You might strap it to your foot or something, right? So the question is, what is Trikonasana for? It's a tool. It's a specific kind of tool. How is that different from Urdhva Dhanurasana? How is that different from Tadasana? How's that different from Padmasana? So maybe each tool is going to unveil some story in your body that you might have some revelation about yourself.